What's up, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hearts Pokemon Nest. This time we've got some more fun for you with Destined Rivals Pokemon. This one specifically is combining, actually, Destined Rivals and Pokemon 151 with a crazy Koffing deck. So we are going to get into that. I'll go over each card in the deck, why I included it, what it does, go over the strategies on how to play the deck, the strengths and the weaknesses of it as well, and then we'll finish with some other cards to consider swapping into the deck. So let's get into it. Alright, and there is the deck list up on the left hand side of the screen, and we've got our Team Rocket's Weezing. This is pretty much what the deck's revolving around. This is the Pokemon you want in active, really. This is the one you want attacking, and it's because of its one attack, which is Explode Together. Now, this attack does 40 damage for each Pokemon in play that has Koffing or Weezing in its name, which is interesting, both yours and your opponent's. So that's, I actually just noticed that right now. So I guess if your opponents are playing, it's even better. But that's pretty crazy. So when you think about it, it's like, okay, we've got him as a 40x, and then let's say I get 5 bench Pokemon. I can do 6 times 4 is 240. Not bad. Okay, but if you look at the deck list here, we found a way to cheat this and get even more. And then when you're thinking too, you're like, I can only have 4 Weezings and 4 Koffings. Well, guess what? We have the regular ones. It's any Koffing or Weezing, not just Team Rockets. So we can throw in any of them from any set and have, basically, we can get 8 of each of them. Now, what we're going to do here, let's just kind of get into some of that, is Area 0 Underdepths. So that way we can have up to 8 Pokemon on your bench, which means now we can have all of our Koffing and Weezing in play at once if we include our active spot Pokemon, right? So that means now if we can get that going, we're going to think about 4 times 8, 320. Right, if I'm thinking about that right, yeah, which it is. So that's pretty good damage. I mean, you're not always, and you're usually not going to have that much, but you're going to get some pretty good damage, some pretty easy damage out there with that. So let's start from the top, okay? And in fact, it is important. So we have the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX. This is what's going to allow our Area 0 Underdepths to work, right? Honestly, you could kind of choose whatever you want. I've got 2 other options that I'm considering swapping in, and we'll talk about that during the other cards. But the reason I do like this one is because of its Cornerstone stance. Prevent all damage from attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon with an ability. So we know there's so many Pokemon out there with an ability that, you know, if you want, you could just change your whole strategy, just get this guy inactive, and your opponent can't damage you at all, and just get a ground energy and then any others on there, and then we can just start dealing some damage. So it's something to consider, but really I just kind of have him on the bench. You could put in whoever you want, obviously recommending a basic Pokemon, because when we're talking about 4 of each Koffing and Weezing, that means 8 each, 16 total, and you're going to want that. So you don't have a ton of leeway in this deck for other stuff. Okay, then we've got the Koffing from 151, right? Suspicious Gas for 20. Your active Pokemon is now confuse your opponents. Solid. And then we've got this Weezing. Now, if you've been with this channel for a bit, you remember I actually made a deck on this revolving around simply this Koffing and Weezing, and it kind of works well. This one's fun in case you're like not ready to go, or you really just want to mess with your opponent, I guess. You have Let's Have a Blast. So if this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out by damage, flip a coin. If heads, the attacking Pokemon is knocked out. So it's just a hilarious move, especially when we're playing against Pokemon EXs. Maybe our Rocket's Weezing is not ready to go, so you're going to throw in this Weezing in the active, and you got a good chance of knocking them out with you, a 50-50 chance. You can use Spinning Fumes, which is 50 damage and then 10 more to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. I don't really use this too often. I'm focused on getting my Rocket's Weezings going, but it's an option, okay? Now we have Team Rocket's Koffing, which is another solid one, right? So if this Pokemon is in the active spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, even if it's knocked out, search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon that have Koffing in their name and put it on your bench. So again, that can be Team Rocket's Koffing, or it could just be a regular Koffing. So it really helps us just get this bench swarm. There's a lot of cards that really help us grab these Koffing from deck and put them onto our bench. It also has the leaking gas for 30. Usually not going to use that, okay? Then obviously I already talked about the Team Rocket's Weezing. Does have a 130 HP, which is honestly solid for a stage 1 basic non-EX Pokemon, but it's still usually going to get knocked out, you know, in one shot, okay? Moving on, we've got Nest Ball. So I did include, how many Nest Balls do I have? I almost forgot. But I did include Nest Ball so that we can make sure to pull our Ogerpon, and then just a little bit of extra in order to get our Koffings and, well, Rocket's Koffings as well, right? What am I looking at my list? 4 Nest Balls, so I did include 4. Night Stretcher, that's another one that we really need in there. 4 of, because our Pokemon are getting knocked out, and the deck revolves around having these bad boys in the active spot, right? Or at least on bench. Pokégear 3.0, just a really good search tool. I've been using this one recently with a lot of these Rockets things because the Rockets supporter cards are just so good. It also helps us pull our Iono, so it almost acts as like a pseudo draw engine with that, because then we can Iono down. And a lot of times my hand size is staying small because I'm playing out these Koffings, Weezings, and all that good stuff, right? Now, from there is my A-Spec. I'm going with Precious Trolley for now. Honestly, there's a lot of options for A-Specs, and really, like, when I'm looking at this deck, like, it's almost all that there's room for changes, and there's a lot of room. I like the Precious Trolley because we can search for any number of basics and put them on the bench. So, obviously, if we get our Stadium out there, we're able to just, boom, search, fill that bench with Koffings from the word go. And then obviously just kind of go from there. It makes our job easier, also thins out the deck. So I like Precious Trolley personally, but there are other options we'll talk about later. Okay, then Super Rod. I only included 1 Super Rod. I think the Night Stretchers work best, and it's not, it hasn't done me too bad so far, not having more than 1. Ultra Ball, tried and true 3. Area 0 Underdepths, you definitely want 4 of these because, you know, if we don't have it out, it's going to be rough. And then also keep in mind that when your opponent gets rid of this, you're going to have to discard Pokemon. So that's when your Super Rod comes into play. You may have to discard up to 3 Pokemon at once. Okay, then tried and true 3 bosses orders. Now the other one I really like in this deck is Colress's Tenacity. So you search your deck for a Stadium and an energy card, reveal and put it into your hand. The Stadium is necessary, but also we're playing pretty much all non-basic energies. So this is a really good card to be able to search for those non-basic energies, which will be the Team Rocket's energy, and then I've also got some Spike energy in there too. So this card, it really works. I've never used a Colress Tenacity in deck, but I think it works here. Alright, then Iono. I'm going to go with 4 Iono in this case. I think it's a pretty good card, especially getting our opponent down late game. Team Rocket's Proton. So this is another, just a really nice way of drawing our basics. Obviously, we can only get the Rockets, so we're only able to get the Team Rockets Koffings. We can't get the regular, but even grabbing 3 is really nice there. And then from there, I just kind of do whatever I want with it, you know. So I'm adding 3 of them in here. Okay, then Spiky Energy. I initially had 4. I went down to 3 because I wanted a basic ground. Obviously, all 4 of the Rockets energy, that's a must-have. And then I put the 1 ground energy just in case my opponent has all abilities, so I can just attach this bad boy to my Ogerpon and then just start dealing damage and willing them down. And the strategy, strengths and weaknesses of the deck. So the strategy, get all the ball. Okay, don't make it weird. We know that these are ball Pokemon, Koffing, Weezing. You know, they're a bunch of ball Pokemon. We want to get them onto our bench, right? And then from there, get our Terra Pokemon, which is going to be our Teal Mask, and our Stadium. That's the next step. Really, that's kind of like I wouldn't call it priority 1. I think still like fill up your bench and leave that spot and then get him, because we could already start dealing damage, especially depending on your opponent. Even if we have a full bench of 280 or 300, we're not always going to one-shot them. And if we focus on getting this guy out early, then a lot of times we may be able to start hitting before they even have their stage 2s. And, you know, even if we get 3 or 4, like 4 Koffings, which will be 4, you know, 4 on bench of whatever, then we could hit for 160, you know, so that's going to two-shot most things. So that's why I say, like, focus on the Weezings and then kind of get your stadium out with your Cornerstone mask as you're going, right? And then obviously getting your Weezing in active. For the most part, you want this bad boy in the active, the Rockets, but of course you can always go with this guy if maybe you haven't found the Colress or the Rockets energy, and they have a EX inactive, right? This is a good, like, sacrificial lamb, you know. Unfortunately, it's kind of sad, but you know, it is what it is, right? The strengths, it does hit pretty hard, right? We can get a maximum 320 damage. I find more often it is pretty easy for me to deal 280. That's something I'm often doing. 240 to 280 is probably my average damage when I'm playing this deck once I get going. And it's really easy to set up. There's so many different cards for us to get this bench full. And then what's happening too is when we're filling that bench and we're pulling, let's say we use that Precious Trolley and fill up that bench once we have already our Cornerstone mask, you know, that's 6 cards or so that we've just removed from our deck and thinned it out. Think about that. It really makes it nice. And then it's a single price deck unless they get the Cornerstone mask inactive, which people do often do. Obviously, they want to boss him up and KO him because, you know, then I am not able to take advantage of the Area Zero. But again, a lot of players can't even KO him because their attacker is an ability Pokemon. The one guy to watch out for is obviously Dragapult. That's probably, like many, the worst matchup here because Dragapult doesn't have an ability, so he can just knock out this guy. It is going to take him a few turns. They can't put damage to him on the bench. Prevent all damage under this Pokemon by attacks. I don't remember if he can get the 60 on him. I think he can because it's not damage. But anyway, then we've got Weezing. So that's a tough one there because they can also slowly whittle these bad boys down. So that's a tough one. Weaknesses is stage 2 EXs. That's like really the weakness because especially against like a Charizard, you know, it's gonna, if I'm only hitting for 160, then that's like a really bad spot. I need to at least get to 200, then I can two-shot them. The ones that are having those 330 HP are really the tough ones to hit, even like Dragapults, because they're kind of trading prizes in a different way. Even though they're going to one-shot him and put 60 on my bench, you know, there's often turns where then they're going to hit me for 3 prizes because of the way that they're spreading damage, where I'm kind of relying on the fact that I can hit them faster than they hit me and take more prizes. So that's what makes it tough. Okay. Bench damage again from there, and then we need a lot of Pokemon. If they're quick and they're able to just get this bench sniping done and get my bench really down, then it can be a struggle. Let's talk about some other cards to consider in the deck. You know, the one that I really actually have thought about is the Terapagos EX. A little bit more HP, 10 more HP. Unified Beatdown is going to let us do 30 damage for each bench Pokemon, so it kind of plays off of the Rocket's Weezing. You know, the Area Zero Underdepths was created for Terapagos, and we're gonna have that bench swarm, so it does well. It does need 2 energy, which actually isn't bad. Then I would be able to maybe switch back, get rid of the ground energy, and just have 4 of the spiky energies on there. So it's a pretty solid move. I may consider it, but I do like the ability trapping on there. The other one to think about would be the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, using Sob to make them not be able to retreat, and then my kind of retreating for 1, and then on our end and bring in our Rocket's Weezing in there. I don't know, it's a solid one. It's probably the only other one I'd consider putting in there in this deck in terms of Terra Pokemon, right? And remember, we want basics, so we don't want to have to evolve or anything. We don't have enough room in the deck for any more than 2 of whatever Terras we're going with, in my opinion. All right, then from there, honestly, as you see, like, we don't have a lot of room to move anything out here. So to me, like, the only option of swapping is going to be our Ace Spec. Now, if we want to be on theme, okay, we can use a Deluxe Bomb. More balls in there, more things exploding. It's an interesting one, and it's one to think about. I don't know. I do want to consider it. I may try some matches out with it because I think it's a solid one that can really help us one-shot Pokemon in some ways when they're going to knock us out. So something to think about. Hyper Aroma is another one. It's kind of the reverse of the trolley, right? Whereas the trolley is filling up our bench. We do want to consider that we have a lot of ways. We have the Protons, we have Nest Balls. So do we really need that? Maybe what we want actually is a Hyper Aroma, and we're going to use that when our bench is full, and then boom, 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 get 3 stage 1s and evolve them. That's one to think about, but I do like the trolley just a little bit more. Then from there we've got a Prime Catcher, which works too. You know, we don't really have issues with our Pokemon getting trapped in active, because if our Weezing gets trapped in active, the non-rocket one, fine, let him die, and we can flip a coin to see if we trade prizes. The Ogerpon isn't an issue. We can attach Retreat to him. But the Prime Catcher can help us act as a second bosses and not have to waste energy. We only have 8 total energy, and 4 of those energy can only be attached to our Rockets Pokemon with the Rocket energy. Otherwise, they get discarded. So something to think about there if you kind of want a more like tried and true safe one. Then we've got Secret Box, which has been gaining a lot of popularity lately. I've always been a fan of Secret Box. But I don't necessarily like the discard, since we've got 16 Pokemon in this deck that are just undiscardable from our hand for the most part. We don't really want to discard things. Although, when we think about it, maybe if we get our bench where we need it to be, we can discard things like a Team Rocket's Proton, but even still, okay? Now finally is the Unfair Stamp. We're having a lot of Pokemon KO'd. Getting our opponent hand-locked is always nice. So that's probably the only other one I would consider changing out here. You know, and honestly, there are others. I mean, Legacy Energy is an interesting one to think about, because we can, you know, it gives us an extra energy and also one less prize card. I would probably go with something like that on our regular Weezing. Thinking about that. Or the other one would be the better Super Rod, right? The one that brings everything directly back to hand, and we can get up to the 5 of those Pokemon, which can help us really late game. But other than that, I don't know. I think we're good. Alright, well that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. Hope you enjoyed this deck. Hope you're excited. Later in the week on Friday, we're going to get this. We're going to put it to the test on TCG Live. I've been having really good results with it. It's a really fun deck. It's such a memey deck too, the way it works. And you know how I love those decks if you watch this channel. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button and become part of the Hawks Nest, a fearless flock of fabulous folks who love to do what we love. I love making these videos so much. I'm so excited. Next up, I had a request for an Annihilate deck with the Destined Rivals one. Annihilate is a fun Pokemon. I really love it. I'd seen that one. It was kind of on my short list as it was. So we're going to get into that one. So stay tuned next week for our Annihilate overview. But until then, we're going to see you next time.